They said he was done. They said the tribal chief had fallen. They said Roman Reigns would never recover from the humiliation at WrestleMania. But WWE just proved every single doubter dead wrong, and what happened last night will have you questioning everything you thought you knew about power in professional wrestling. Because Roman Reigns didn't just return, he returned with a vengeance that sent shockwaves through the entire WWE universe, and the carnage he left behind will be talked about for decades. But here's what's going to absolutely infuriate you: WWE kept this secret so well that even the biggest wrestling insiders were caught completely off guard. You think you've seen Roman Reigns angry before? You think you've witnessed the tribal chief at his most destructive? Think again. What unfolded was a masterclass in calculated destruction that makes his previous reign of terror look like child's play. And the reunion that followed? It's going to change the landscape of WWE forever. But before we dive into this absolute chaos, let me ask you something that's going to make your blood boil. Why did WWE wait this long to pull the trigger on what might be the most anticipated return in recent memory? The answer will shock you, and it reveals a strategy so cunning that it borders on genius. For months, we've watched Bron Breakker run roughshod over the WWE roster like he owns the place. This second-generation superstar has been throwing his weight around, destroying legends, crushing dreams, and acting like he's the heir apparent to the throne that Roman Reigns built. The audacity! The sheer disrespect of this kid thinking he could just waltz in and claim what took the tribal chief years to construct. And don't even get me started on Bronson Reed. This absolute unit has been on a path of destruction that would make a hurricane jealous. Week after week, we've watched him steamroll through competitor after competitor, leaving broken bodies and shattered careers in his wake. The man is a walking wrecking ball, and he's been operating under the dangerous delusion that there's no one who can stop his rampage. But here's what these two fools failed to realize: you don't just dismantle the foundation of Roman Reigns' empire without consequences. You don't walk into the house that the tribal chief built and start rearranging furniture without expecting the original architect to come home and restore order. The signs were there, but we were all too blind to see them. The subtle references, the cryptic social media posts, the way certain WWE officials would get that knowing look in their eyes when asked about Roman's future. They were building to something massive, and we should have known that the silence wasn't retreat, it was the calm before the storm. Last night changed everything. The arena was electric, the crowd was on their feet, but nobody, and I mean nobody, was prepared for what was about to unfold. Bron Breakker was in the middle of his typical post-match celebration, standing over his latest victim like some kind of conquering hero. The cockiness, the arrogance, the sheer disrespect for everyone who came before him, it was written all over his face. Bronson Reed was there too, that mountain of a man basking in his own dominance, probably thinking about his next victim, his next conquest. These two had formed an unholy alliance of destruction, convinced that they were the future of WWE, convinced that the old guard was finished. Then the music hit. Not just any music, that music. The tribal drums that have struck fear into the hearts of WWE superstars for years. The sound that signals the arrival of royalty, the anthem of dominance, the warning that the head of the table has entered the building. The crowd erupted. Grown men were jumping out of their seats, children were screaming at the top of their lungs, and even the most jaded wrestling fans felt their hearts skip a beat. Because after months of absence, after all the speculation and rumors, the tribal chief was home. But this wasn't the Roman Reigns we remembered. This was something different, something darker, something infinitely more dangerous. The way he walked down that ramp, it wasn't the confident stride of a champion returning to reclaim his throne. This was the purposeful march of a man seeking retribution. His eyes were locked on Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed with an intensity that could melt steel. You could see the calculation, the planning, the months of pent-up rage bubbling just beneath the surface. This was a man who had been watching from the shadows, taking notes, and preparing for the perfect moment to remind everyone exactly why he's called the tribal chief. Bron Breakker's face, oh, his face. The moment he realized what was happening, you could watch the color drain from his cheeks. All that bravado, all that arrogance, all those claims about being the future, it all crumbled in an instant when faced with the reality of Roman Reigns' presence. Bronson Reed tried to look tough, tried to maintain that intimidating aura he's built his reputation on. But even a mountain trembles when faced with an earthquake, and Roman Reigns returning wasn't just seismic, it was cataclysmic. What happened next will go down in WWE history as one of the most brutal displays of dominance ever captured on camera. Roman didn't just attack, he dismantled. Every punch was calculated, every move was designed for maximum impact, every moment was choreographed to send a message that echoed throughout the entire wrestling world. Bron Breakker thought he was tough? Roman Reigns reminded him what real power looks like. That spear, oh, that spear. It didn't just take Breakker down, it nearly sent him through the Earth's core. The impact was so devastating that you could feel it through your television screen. But Roman wasn't finished. Oh no, he was just getting started. Bronson Reed stepped up, all 330 pounds of him, thinking his size would intimidate the returning king. Wrong move. Roman looked at Reed like he was nothing more than an obstacle to be removed, and removed him he did. The Superman punch that connected with Reed's jaw wasn't just a wrestling move, it was a statement. It was Roman Reigns announcing to the world that he's back, he's angry, and he's ready to reclaim what was always his. But here's where the story takes a turn that will leave you speechless, because just when you thought the destruction was complete, just when Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed were lying broken and beaten in the center of the ring, the real surprise arrived. The music hit again. Not Roman's music this time, but a sound that sent the crowd into absolute hysteria. Jimmy and GUSO, the brothers who had been separated from their cousin for what felt like an eternity, were making their way to the ring. The emotion in that arena was palpable. Fans were crying, grown men were embracing strangers, and the energy was so intense that you could cut it with a knife. Because this wasn't just a reunion, this was the restoration of the most dominant faction in recent WWE history. Jimmy USO's face showed a mixture of relief and determination. For months, he had been adrift without his family, struggling to find his identity in a wrestling world that had moved on without the bloodline. But seeing Roman back, seeing his cousin standing tall once again, it was like coming home. GUSO was practically bouncing with excitement. The man who had been searching for his place in the WWE hierarchy suddenly had his answer handed to him on a silver platter. The bloodline was back, baby, and that meant G was exactly where he belonged, at the side of the tribal chief. The three men standing in the center of that ring, with the broken bodies of Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed at their feet, it was an image that will be burned into wrestling history forever. The original, the authentic, the undisputed rulers of WWE had returned to reclaim their throne. But let's talk about what this really means, because the implications are staggering. For months, WWE has been desperately trying to create new stars, pushing fresh faces, attempting to move beyond the Roman Reigns era. And while there's nothing wrong with building for the future, they forgot one crucial detail: you can't replace a king. Roman Reigns isn't just another wrestler. He's not just another main event player. He's the foundation upon which modern WWE was built. His absence created a power vacuum that no one could fill, and last night proved that beyond any shadow of a doubt. Bron Breakker, for all his talent and potential, learned a harsh lesson about respect. You don't walk into someone else's kingdom and declare yourself ruler without expecting consequences. The beating he received wasn't just physical, it was educational. Roman Reigns gave him a masterclass in what real dominance looks like. Bronson Reed discovered that size isn't everything when faced with pure intensity. All those muscles, all that power, all that intimidation factor, none of it matters when you're standing across from someone who operates on a completely different level of ruthlessness. The reunion with Jimmy and GUSO isn't just about nostalgia, it's about necessity. WWE needs the bloodline because the bloodline represents something that can't be manufactured or replicated. It represents authenticity in a world full of pretenders. Think about what this means for the immediate future of WWE. Every single superstar on that roster is now looking over their shoulder, wondering if they're next on Roman's list. Every champion is questioning whether their title reign can survive the return of the tribal chief. Every faction is wondering if they can compete with the original blueprint for dominance. But here's what's really going to make you angry: WWE could have done this months ago. They could have brought Roman back at any point and created this kind of electricity, this kind of excitement. Instead, they let mediocrity reign while their biggest star sat on the sidelines. The ratings are going to explode. Social media is already going insane with clips and highlights from last night's return. Wrestling fans around the world are remembering why they fell in love with WWE in the first place, because of moments like this. And don't think for a second that this is just a one-time thing. Roman Reigns didn't return to make a cameo appearance. He came back to reclaim his empire. The tribal chief is here to remind everyone that there's only one head of the table, and his name is Roman Reigns. The chemistry between Roman, Jimmy, and G was instantaneous. It was like they had never been apart. The way they moved together, the way they communicated without words, the way they dominated that ring space, it was poetry in motion. Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed learned that being tough and being tribal chief tough are two completely different things. They discovered that there are levels to this business, and Roman Reigns operates on a level that most wrestlers can only dream of reaching. The WWE landscape has been permanently altered. Every storyline, every feud, every championship picture now has to be viewed through the lens of Roman Reigns' return. Because when the tribal chief is active, everything else becomes secondary. This return wasn't just about revenge, it was about restoration. Restoring order to a WWE universe that had been spiraling into chaos. Restoring the natural hierarchy that places Roman Reigns at the apex of sports entertainment. Restoring the bloodline to their rightful position as the most feared faction in all of wrestling. The message has been sent loud and clear: Roman Reigns is back, the bloodline is reunited, and the WWE universe better acknowledge their tribal chief. Because whether you love him or hate him, whether you cheer for him or against him, you cannot ignore the undeniable fact that Roman Reigns is professional wrestling. What we witnessed wasn't just a return, it was a coronation. The king has reclaimed his throne, and the kingdom will never be the same. Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed were just the first casualties in what promises to be an absolute reign of terror. The tribal combat has begun, and there can be only one victor. Acknowledge your tribal chief, because Roman Reigns is back, the bloodline is complete, and the WWE Universe is about to experience dominance on a level they had almost forgotten was possible. This is just the beginning, and if you're not ready for what comes next, you better get ready, because the head of the table has returned to claim what was always his. The throne awaits, and Roman Reigns is here to rule.